Alex here from Heavy New York, and on the phone we got Billy from O Zorn. Thank you so much for your time today, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Yep, it's so awesome to have you here. So the newest album is Your Killer, which came out the 20th of March, so fairly recently. Do you want to talk about like how the making of this record was, the recording, songwriting, mixing, all that fun stuff?
Yeah, sure. We've been writing this record for quite some time. I mean, we're just following up from our first record, the self-titled. Been quite a bit of time in between. I'd actually gone through a couple of drummers too before we landed on the drummer that performed on the album. But so there was quite a bit of time to sit with the songs and just work them out. Certainly wasn't a rushed writing process at all. By the time we were ready to record, we were pretty well dialed in. We were initially going to be recording the record with the gentleman that engineered and mixed the first record, and had that all set up to go. And as we were kind of doing pre-production for it all, I got a call from my buddy Lou, who's the house engineer over at Studio 606 up in Los Angeles, which is the Foo Fighters studio, Neve Board, which they did that Sound City documentary on, which was super rad. And he had heard wind that we were going to be writing a new record, or we were writing a new record and getting ready to record. I had done some work at that studio when it first opened, like in the maybe around 2005, 2006. My previous band, Who Rides the Tiger, had done a bunch of recordings there, and so we had remained friends with all the engineers there, and have kind of been in and out of that studio the last like 10 years, or ever since, I should say. And so didn't want to pass up on that opportunity, so we kind of changed gears and scheduled time to go into that studio. Have you heard of that studio before?
606?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so it's a pretty amazing place. I've been in bands and recording records forever, but that place, just giant, huge tracking room. They got that old Neve board from Sound City in there, and it sounds as awesome as you can possibly think. The EQs on it are pretty amazing. It's all the faders and pods all crack when you turn them, and but at the same time, there's a certain finesse to running that board.
How many channels is that thing?
It's 24, but it's it's got all the interfaces and whatnot to bounce out, I guess. I don't know the terminology for that, but so I just started tracking just started laying the tracks down. We booked basically 7 days, 5 days to track, 2 days to mix, and and then after that, of course, get it to mastering. So we went and tracked for 5 days, and you'd think 5 days would be enough to do to lay a rock record down, but it was a struggle, a lot of work. We were staying in a hotel down the street, in kind of a shitty part of town, up near Northridge, and was also at the same time dealing with a guitar player that was kind of kicking a bad drug habit. He was just kind of all over the place, so it was quite a chore to kind of keep him engaged throughout the whole process. But I think the end result, I think, kind of turned out for the best. All of us kind of going into that record had some demons that we were working with personally, and so the whole process, the whole time during recording was kind of dark.
I see that in the music.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. Like, yeah, you listen to the record, or I listen to the record anyways. You can, I mean, I could just feel it. Like how we were all feeling at the time as a band. We got one guy that's sick of, sick of a drug habit. We got another guy that's dealing with uses a lot, and just court problems and whatnot, and then my own personal hell that I was going through. I had recently quit drinking, and I don't know if you know anything about quitting drinking, quitting drugs, but when you're clean and sober and you're trying to deal with two nut jobs on the other side, it's a bit taxing, but nonetheless, we got through it. Started mixing the record at 606. Things weren't really going as we kind of had hoped. I really wasn't hearing it in the mix, and then there's some timing issues that come about where we weren't going to be able to actually finish mixing the record within the time period that we wanted. We just ran out of time. The studio time that we had booked had been already booked by a bigger band, and so we had to kind of cut out and finishing the work was just put on hold. And so instead of doing that, we actually just went back to the guy that mixed our first record, brought all the files to him. This guy named Paul Miner. He's out in Orange County, runs Buzz Bomb Studios. He's still a lot of work. Like, he just finished recording and mixing the new Agnostic Front record. But he's kind of from that world. He used to be a bass player in a band called Death by Stereo. Mm-hmm. Pretty well known producer, engineer, mix guy, and so he mixed it, mastered it, and that was that. It was done.
I gotta tell you, I always ask every artist, how the making of each record was, especially when the record's brand new and everything, but hearing how you explained it and everything you were going through, it just really added like a lot more context to this record, I feel like. You mentioned that, the songs were worked on for quite a while. You had these songs in the back burner for a while. So, I'd imagine, did your personal experiences combined with the making of this record, change the composition of the songs at all or anything like that?
So when we first started, we had my buddy Dan, who was playing drums with us in the beginning, and then this guy Jason, who was a band called Revolution Mother. We basically did the first record together, and then we kind of fizzled out for a while. That first record, I don't know if you have listened to it or know about it, but it was pretty much completed in 2012, 2013, and it was shelved until 2017 when we actually released it. So those two guys were with us. We had been a band for quite some time, and we started working on the skeletons of the new songs. Probably in maybe 2015, 2016, and so there, a lot of the ideas were already there. But then the band was so on and off with shows, and then just trying to get rehearsals together, and schedules were just fucked up, and just couldn't make it happen. And then eventually my drummer left, so I had to replace him. And this guy JJ from a band called Company of Serpents had just moved out from Denver to Long Beach, so he joined the band for a while, and then we kind of picked up starting writing the new record. Then my other guitar player leaves, right? And so now it's just me and JJ, the drummer. So I don't have another guitar player. My buddy Billy, who's the other guitar player in the band, he was in Florida at the time, just getting out of rehab, and reached out to me about moving back to the West Coast. And Billy's somebody I grew up with. We're from the same part of California, Southern California, same city, out in Moreno Valley, and he had bounced out to Florida at some point in the early 2000s to go raise his family. And at some point, he kind of caught the business end of a heroin addiction and biker gang mentality and whatnot, and so we kind of lost him there for a while, and but I always kind of kept my eye on him and see what he's up to. But anyways, he ended up in rehab for heroin, and was just in trouble with the law and whatnot. I believe he tried to burn his wife's house down at some point too. Pretty interesting character. You should get him on the line sometime. But so anyways, long story short, he was getting out of rehab and was wanting to get out of Florida, come back to the West Coast, start a new life. Start doing music again. I said, okay, that sounds great. Somehow, if you get your ass out here, you can play second fiddle in O Zorn, and we'll get that going. And sure as shit, he started a GoFundMe page and got enough scratch to fly out and get a one-way ticket from Florida out to Long Beach and join the band. But unfortunately, so the doctors had him on Suboxone to kick his heroin addiction, and he didn't really have any money to. So the doctors basically told him in Florida, listen, if you leave Florida, we're not going to be able to get you your Suboxone, and if you try to get your Suboxone, it's going to be very expensive. And he came out here with basically just $20 to his name, I think, and and no Suboxone, eventually. So basically, what you have with someone who's trying to wean off Suboxone is basically just almost like a heroin addict trying to wean off heroin. So we had that going on. And while he was out here, it was just very hard to keep track of. He'd disappear for a couple of days at a time, and the guy he was living with I ended up getting a text message with, "Hey, have you seen Billy?" Or we haven't seen him for a couple of days. You know what I mean? And or a car would end up missing, or a window broken or something. Yeah, it was a fucking mess. And so all the while, I'm trying to write a record. So I had to deal with a little bit of that with recording the album. So we kind of kept him busy. But eventually he started kind of coming around, but he was also dealing with depression. And we kind of went in, like I said, into this album with him in that state of mind.
Wow.
And I can get into the drummer too, but that's.
Yeah. I mean, I was just curious with the album in itself, because when I listened to songs like Cult Status and Loved and France on Foot and Rats and Casket and a lot of these songs, I really feel like there's an essence of darkness with it. It's fair to say that you took a very negative experience almost and made it into a positive outcome, right? This almost was kind of like an outlet for it in a way, right?
Yeah, well, dude, I'm surprised that we even got to the studio to record it. You know what I mean? The stress and everything involved. I guess in this regard, art imitates life, for the most part. So it's certainly, it's got all the feeling. I mean, when I listen to the music, I listen to it back. It feels exactly how it was. It was just dark and we were posted up in this just dingy, shitty hotel room over in Pacoima, which is the next city over, and it's just a dump. And we're going back there every night after recording all day long, and just it was just dark and dirty, and waking up and getting after it again, and not to mention, man, thank God, we had done a really good job with pre-production, because we just had a lot of work. I mean, some of those songs are 7-8 minutes long, and thankfully our drummer's just a super pro too, because a lot of records, can die. Recording sessions can die out pretty quick if your drummer isn't just completely dialed in. And thankfully, he was. A lot of first and second takes, to get all the drum tracks down. And then, and the Billy and I have recorded enough records on guitar and whatnot to nail those down. and then vocals, man. Vocals we spent some good time on getting all the vocals completely, sitting where we wanted them to, and not a whole lot of changes while we were recording, but.
Yeah. So is it fair to say that, being that you mentioned, like, I might have just asked this a little bit before, but like you said, you had these songs now for a while. So during the making of it and everything you experienced, are we hearing like what those songs always were, or did you have to like change the compositions a little bit?
Yeah. Sometimes, recording. Sometimes you change shit on the fly. I mean, we didn't, just as far as like, well, let me rephrase that. The songs morphed into what they were throughout time. You know what I mean? They certainly were not set in stone in the making of them, for sure. But the way I write songs, and my songs are pretty, they're pretty structured. You know what I mean? As far as I spend a lot of time in bands where we're writing kind of writing hit structures was ingrained in me, and so when I started dabbling around with this type of music, there was already that kind of verse chorus, bridge, chorus out, whatever. There was always that kind of structure ingrained in my brain, and so as far as structure is concerned, that's always there. But as far as and I'm not even sure I'm answering your question, but everything was pretty much already dialed in before we entered the studio. The only thing that would change is just maybe some vocal notes, maybe some vocal harmony, maybe some melody would change a little bit, but for the most part, everything was pretty much solid walking in. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
I don't know if I did.
To a T. Being a songwriter, like, because did you almost kind of like, did ideas for this album sometimes come out of the blue, or did you have to like lay riffs down, and like was there like a lot of improvising involved, and maybe like when it comes to lyrics, simply put, like
my lyric process is pretty. I don't even know if it's typical of the way we do it, but I'm pretty sure a lot of lyricists kind of do this the same way. But like usually I get we'll get the when I'm writing like lyrics, or I'm just basically writing patterns, vocal patterns, that all kind of comes easy. If I got a good guitar riff, that I've written, I can usually put the vocal melody comes pretty quickly. And then it's all just about working in all the oohs and ahs and syllables. I like big long words. Where I can play around with them and bend them into the song. The way I hear it. And so a lot of like lyrics and whatnot are written way after. I don't usually. I will record scratch tracks on vocals throughout the writing process, and then listen back and just kind of start sifting through the different noises and oohs and ahs, like I said, and rambling and mumbles and whatnot, and then start hearing certain words and phrases, and then once I kind of have a good phrase or a word that fits the tone of the music, I will then start picking apart, just kind of start putting the puzzle together as far as the storyline is concerned. Mm-hmm. So and then even the writing process with that, sometimes that is the one thing that I will do throughout the recording process is lyrics will change. If I record something, I listen to it back, I'm like, let me try something else, right? I might have to make up a different word on the spot. And some of those lyrics I was writing literally, the last day of vocal tracking. So sitting in a hotel room just fucking racking my brain to try to finish a song, it's pretty wild, but I guess, so a lot of the stories are, a a lot of the stories don't even really come together until the actual recording process.
Yeah.
So
I almost feel like you should write like a song or maybe even an album based on the making of this album, because I feel like that there's a whole story and narrative behind that from what you were just telling me. I think what you were giving me was almost like the abridged version in a way, right?
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Is the music that you make open to interpretation, or are you trying to get the listener to sort of be engaged into seeing things from your point of view?
Well, I mean, the songs are pretty, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, sure, anything's open to interpretation, but, you know, the songs are pretty set as far as the storyline is concerned, you know? Some of the stories, man, I mean, you know what I mean? Some of the storylines are still hitting me. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes, like, I'm still interpreting my own shit, you know? I'm like going, okay, well, you know, or at least I start to fine-tune it a little bit more. You know, like it's such a strange process, and I'm not sure I can ever explain it well. But it you know, like a painting is never finished. You know what I mean? Or art is never finished. That's the idea. But you know, and I kind of look at it the same way with writing music. You know, there's always something I want to do different after I hear what we've recorded. But I also feel like, you know, lyrics and storylines, you know, are always kind of evolving too. There's certain things in these songs where I'm like, ah, shit, man, you know, that kind of goes along with what happened to me here, or this kind of reminds me of this person. You know, there's always. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you know, like it's almost like when you hear a song, you know, not necessarily by me, but just any in general, and you're kind of like, ah, fuck, that reminds me of somebody. You know what I mean? Like, you know, or you know, like. You know, and in there, you know, I guess would lie a different interpretation, but anyways, yeah. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, and the final question I wanted to ask you, because it seems like work definitely comes out of work. So I know, you know, Your Killer is fresh out now, but would you think that you already have ideas for the next O Zorn album, or for any other songs written or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we're already writing it. So, I mean, this record was this new record, Killer, was recorded, you know, last spring. So, you know, we sat on it for almost a year. And truth be told, you know what I mean? So, I mean, little short story on that, you know, our management, wanted us to sit on the record until almost like this summer, you know, to try to engage some of the record labels and whatnot to, you know, to possibly take it on. And, you know, by the time it was all mixed and mastered, you know, we were going into, you know, like October maybe of last year. And it was one of those things where I was like, dude, I'm not fucking sitting on this record. You know, like I have not seen on this record. We basically, you know, with the writing involved and everything that had happened to the band leading into the recording of the record. You know, I was already over it. You know, I really was. I wanted to record this record because I felt like, you know, we needed to. It had to be done. But man, it was exhausting going into recording this record. Man, I was checked out for the most part. And so to sit on the record for any longer than we had to wasn't going to happen. And so I decided to just try to release it on my own. Hired a couple of really good PR people, one in London and then one in Monaca. And, you know, just tried our hand and you know, see if it would stick with you know, on the PR end. And it did, you know, for the most part. And then seeing Red Records out of, you know, Cleveland picked us up. And, the rest is kind of history, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I've already started writing new songs, and it will most likely enter the studio in this, you know, this summer to record this follow up.
Awesome. I definitely look forward to hearing that, man. Well, Billy, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciated this.
No problem. Hope I don't sound like a moron, but
everybody says that. You all sound amazing. If anybody sounds like a moron, it's me.
All right, man.
All right. But everybody, Billy of O Zorn, Your Killer, out now. Be sure to pick that up. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.